Welcome to the Next Gen Business Builders podcast with your co-hosts, Bethany Venekamp and Cole Nicholas.
Okay, hello. Welcome to Next Gen Business Builders, where we have conversations, share insights, and tell stories from the next generation of leaders scaling their business. My name is Bethany Venekamp. I'm your host. I'm the Integrator, COO of Cybertek Systems.
That's
And
right.
with my co-host, Cole Nicholas, who is the visionary and founder of Cybertek Systems.
Hello.
We're
Hello.
really excited to dive into sharing what we're learning, invite you to come along with us. And before we dive into today's topic, which we hope will be super valuable, where we talk about what do you do when you're drowning and find yourself at the center of your business, I want to stop and just talk a little bit about what this podcast is and who's it for, what you can expect. So to kick things off, Cole, will you share with our listeners what is this podcast going to be about?
Okay, so the idea of this podcast was it's actually a derivative of some of Cody Sanchez's work. And so Cody Sanchez actually is saying that there is going to be a coming of age for a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses throughout the country, actually in the next 5 to 10 years. And the idea is that the boomers and the Gen X generations are retiring, and they're retiring in droves. And so what's going to end up happening in the next coming years is that those boomers and Gen Xers need to sell the business to someone. Someone needs to take those businesses over. Now, in some cases, you might get there might be some internal churn inside of those demographics. So you'll have boomers and Gen Xers maybe buying and selling in and amongst themselves. But more than likely, for the vast majority, you're going to end up having millennials and you're going to end up having Gen Z purchase those businesses and take them over. Or they're just going to go under. They're just going to shutter their windows and be done. And so the reality is you're going to find a whole host of people, a whole demographic of millennials and Gen Zs that are going to get thrust into this position of like making decisions for a business when that hasn't been the de facto norm for them for quite a while. And when that happens, it's not an if, it's a when. They're going to need to learn fast, like have a quick how-to on how do we do all of these different things inside of a business to be able to keep this thing running and keep the cash flow moving through the business. And so the idea is that this podcast is a quick and dirty how-to on all these little tips and tricks on how to be able to run and operate a business.
Yes, exactly. We hope to share those things, the challenges, the messiness in the middle, the tools that we've learned. And really, it's for people who find themselves in leadership. Like you said, whether they started the thing from the ground up or they're taking it over or they're maybe the right hand to someone who's leading a business. But that's who we hope to speak to. And anything more you want to say about demographic or the who?
You bet. So it's mainly for kind of the younger demographic. Basically, if you're 40 and under, Americans, who are wanting to perform in the business sector, basically, people who don't want to lose their butt in the first attempt and of running a business, people who kind of yearn for more or are, I guess, who were originally too afraid to start, but now are in that position, are ready to roll.
Definitely. And I think you can even speak to how isolating it can be to find yourself as the leader of a business. And like, where do you find peers who are walking the same journey as you?
Yeah, it's really isolating because millennials and especially the younger demographic, they have a tendency to not want the risk that comes with owning, running, and operating a business, and would much rather have the freedom of that that an 8 to 5 job provides and then just go do their thing, which I now am able to see both sides of the fence on that one. But it can be very, very isolating because now you have all of this responsibility and all of this risk that you are taking on in the hopes that someday this whole thing will pay off in the future. And there aren't a lot of people that are undertaking that journey. So it can feel really isolating.
Mhm. Okay, let's get into what can listeners expect in future episodes in the next few months.
Okay, so these are going to look like really candid, off the cuff conversations. They're going to be really candid and off the cuff if it's from me. They're going to be strategically planned and organized if they're from Bethany. And that duo, that back and forth, is really characterized by in the framework EOS. By Gino Wickman, that's going to be really characterized by the visionary integrator duo. And so if you want to go look that up, that's kind of the person that dreams the dreams and the person that kind of executes on the dreams, and basically makes neat rows and straight lines for everybody to go achieve, right? So the idea is it's really just going to be off the cuff, candid conversations, and hopefully they'll be really valuable for the people that are tuning in.
Yeah.
What else do we got? You think of anything else?
I mean, I think we're going to try to keep these episodes to 30 minutes. We also are going to spice it up with interviews from the connections that Cole and I have made with other people who are business owners or in the same sort of generation as us and beginning the business takeover or the start of a business. So we want to bring monthly interviews of people who are also willing to share their journey, speak candidly with us. I think that you can expect this to be like a come with us. We in no way have totally figured this out or mastered the running of a small business, but we want to, we aspire to that. And so this is totally like come with us on that journey, find some camaraderie, hopefully less isolation, because hopefully you relate and you're like, that's me too. I also want to be better. I want to step up and be a lifelong learner and take the risk of being in this smaller business entrepreneur space. So I want to say that. And I also was just thinking like one of the best insight that I got recently about podcasting specifically and being at the start was give yourself permission to be a C plus student, which for me, I'm sure this doesn't shock you, but like I needed that permission that like we are going to start and we're going to get better as we go, but never in my life have I like aspired to C plus. Like what kind of grades did you get in school?
I was like B plus, A minus. I never aspired to have the A plus. Like the difference between an A and an A plus is negligible in my book. As long as the A is there, that's the highest achievement. I could care less between it's a 91% or a 99%. It's in the 90s. That meant it was an A. That meant I was special.
But would a C plus like have killed you or?
No, my grades actually got worse the longer I went in education. And simply because a C is a passing grade. And I started to actually absorb the minimum effort mentality that is rampant throughout America. So it actually led me to have worse grades rather than continue to achieve the best of the best.
Well, I just want to throw that out there. Like we're getting started, we're doing it. We're just going to be really candid in this. And yeah, any other reasons like why listen to Cole and Bethany talk about business ponderings every week?
The idea is just like, there's a lot of business how-to podcasts. There's a ton of them. There's even a lot of them being produced from like millennials and down. But very rarely are they pointedly specific towards, hey, you're a millennial or you're a Gen Z and you're trying to figure out how to do business. quickly. Like you've got to drink from a fire hose, and we need to figure out what are the shortcuts to be able to get these wheels turning so that we don't fall apart at the seams. And the other thing, or the other reason, is this isn't coming from a place of we have it all figured out and are, deigning to drop off some information along the way. This is kind of a learn with us, from a standpoint of like, here's what we've learned, here's what did work, here's what didn't work. And I definitely don't want to come off as a know-it-all, but I do want to come off as a learn-it-all. And that's really important, is to be able to share all the new, interesting, cool stuff that we're learning along the way to be able to make these businesses run.
Yeah, I love that. And I hope that people find that relatable too. Just to hear, like, as you're running along and you can look over and be like, oh, that trips you up too. Like that tripped us up. And just have a place to share. How do you keep moving forward? So we're excited about that. Let's get into today's topic now. We hope that this is really valuable, and this came from a place of feeling like what might be one of the very first or largest pain points that someone experiences when they are leading a business. And so we're going to talk about what to do when you're drowning, because everything in your business revolves around you, depends on you. You've found yourself at the center. You're the bottleneck. What are some of the symptoms of that, and hopefully some of the systems that we've been able to begin to figure out together to move forward and get some freedom? So we're excited to share that, and I want to start by just saying, like, how do you know if you're the bottleneck? How do you know if you're in the center of things? Sometimes overwhelm is so overbearing, you don't even know that you're in the middle of the whirlwind.
Yep.
So what are some like quick things that you experienced, Cole, or that you could like speak to on that?
So describing when, and it still happens, but like describing that is relatively easy. Sunday night, you have like many panic attacks. You're dreading Monday morning. Now we all have a tendency to dread Mondays, but like when it becomes like a life altering, like I should go take some drugs, like some Prozac kind of thing, in order to enable me to get to Monday. That's different. Or even especially when you are at home and you have a respite of peace from maybe that 6, 7, 8 o'clock until you go to bed at 10 o'clock. And then you remind yourself that you have to wake up and go to work the next day, and you start getting bummed out about that really hard. You're in it. Yeah. There's a special word for like when the wave is coming over the surfer and you're on the inside of that. I don't know what it is. That's what it feels like, is you're inside the tunnel and the crash is coming, Some other ones is when you feel like you're trying to spin 5 plates all at once and you drop one, and then everyone's like, I can't believe that it's like, it gets that feeling of you're just trying to pull as many levers as fast as possible. And everyone is on the sidelines on the outside looking in, almost kind of like watching the circus act happening. And you're looking on the outside going, how do you guys not see this? How do you guys not want to like step in and just grab something? Just you pull that lever, just pull any lever. And oftentimes what it ends up being is that they're afraid to pull a lever because they don't know what to do. They don't know what levers to pull in what sequence, when and where. And so it just mounts this frustration across the board. And then it ends up making you even crazier in your head. It's kind of this echo chamber of crazy where you're like, I'll either burn the business, sell it. We should just stop because this is insane. This makes no sense. All of that would describe what the overwhelming nature of being the bottleneck or the centralized kind of go-to person. When you're overwhelmed, that's how I feel anyway. That's the description.
So in your journey with Cybertek Systems, like, was that day one for you? Or at what point did you feel like now it really is overwhelming, or it is stopping us from operating efficiently?
That didn't set in until about year two. The first 6 months of business is like this crazy, fun, cutthroat shoestring, like when you're starting. That's been my experience. I haven't had the opportunity to take over a business yet. So when you're starting, it's just crazy fun, cutthroat, do everything on a shoestring, just get it started. And you're just pounding the pavement, knocking on doors. There's this wealth of, I don't know, there's this wealth of like almost adrenaline. It's like game day. And that ends up happening for 6 months, maybe 8 months. And then after that, it kind of starts to turn into like business as normal and you've got cash flow coming in. You're just trying to pay off some of your expenses. It doesn't really happen until finally there's so much business. There's so many things that are happening. And then you have bills riding on that business. And maybe your employee gets sick, or maybe you have a project go sideways that was, not anticipated. Now that slows everything down. That's usually when the overwhelm sets, is when the unexpected creeps in from the sidelines. And there's something that comes out of left field. And it's like you have this 25 car pileup and everything kind of lurches to the halt. And you're like the only tow truck driver on the interstate. You're just like trying to figure it out one car at a time. That's when it set in for me, is about year and a half into 2 years.
And like, this is just my observation from the outside, a little bit looking in. And then I joined the team about 2 years into the business.
Yep.
And it felt like maybe it's been cyclical for you a little bit, like that, at least first cycle. Part of that was bringing me on, like just anything to help get your head above water and like just offload a few things. But then as soon as you bring a new employee on, then you have another person you're managing, you have another
Yep.
person that you're, hopefully like giving good standard ops to so that they can handle that. And so then things continue to grow and scale. And then I think just about 6 months ago, it was probably like 8 months ago, I remember it happened again. Like you sent a thing to us in Teams that was like signs of burnout. It was like this odometer kind of thing. And you said to us, like, you were like, at 5,000 RPMs or whatever, I don't know, in
Yep.
cars, what would be a bad RPM.
Yeah,
But
you're about right. On a
like it's
gas.
about to explode. We need to shift.
Mhm.
And so then we've done some more work recently. We really are excited to dig into that in the podcast too. But like, I do think that as your business grows, you continue to kind of like find ways to add capacity. And then all of a sudden you're back at the center and you have to find another way to like expand capacity. And then you're back at the center. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see as we look back, like if it's a one and done, you fix it once and you're never at the center and you're never the bottleneck again, or if there's like kind of a continual checkpoint where you have to come back and say, oh, the symptoms are happening again. The signs of the owner or someone else becoming the bottleneck. And you have to kind of push through that ceiling.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes about business actually comes from Alex Hormozy. And maybe he got this from Gary Vee. I don't know, because Gary Vee is very similar. But the quote goes something along the lines of those who succeed in business just didn't quit past the point of when they should have. Like the ones that succeed in business are basically the ones that are willing to withstand pain the longest. And I had read something similar along that early on and thought, okay, well, I'll just be the guy that doesn't quit until you get to like year 2 and you're in crazy credit card debt. And you're like, well, if you squint, things might work out. But it's not just being the toughest or being the person that's the most willing to withstand pain is probably not a recipe for disaster. Because if you're or not a recipe for success. Because if you don't have a good plan of how to get out of the center of things, of how to bring other people in, of how to bring those people in and cover for your weaknesses, that your deficiencies, you're always going to be at the center. You're always going to be stuck. There's really no way out of it. Like at some point in time, you just got to come to a realization of understanding of what are your strengths and weaknesses. Because the idea that I can do it all is really pervasive in like type A entrepreneurs. And the notion is that you do have limitations, and that there is so much candle to burn, and you might be able to withstand it, but if you have a family, they might not be able to. Or you'll find a sudden and hard break in like mental health or something else. Like the cortisol levels, there is an actual chemical amount that your body can take before your heart gives out or something else, right? And so, yeah, the human body can withstand a lot, but over time, there is a finish line to this if you don't start taking care of yourself. So you've got to be able to know what those limits are and then start taking steps towards, walking it back so you can be in a place of not necessarily comfort, but at least longevity. Otherwise, you're dead in the water.
So to like segue, someone's like, yep, that's me. I identify that I'm just like drowning at the center of everything in the business. And like things would fall apart the minute I am gone for a few days. So like for you, was that something you self-identified, or is that something other people had to speak into you? And kind of like what were the first steps? Okay, how'd you identify it? Self or others? And then like what then were kind of the first steps you began to take once you were like, uh-oh, I'm redlining.
Well, again, I think type A entrepreneurs are very much like, I could do anything whenever at any point in time, and I'm Superman, and I don't have weaknesses. And the reality is that's not true.
And you're a
It's
type A entrepreneur.
yeah. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
were you like, oh, I know that's just happening to me and here's what I'm going to do next? Or did someone have to sort of say, here's where you are, here's what you should do next? Was it a book, a podcast, a friend, a mentor?
No, again, for type A entrepreneurs, there's a sense of I can do anything at any point in time ever. I'm a bulletproof tiger, and there's I have an endless supply of energy and everything else, right? What I found is that my family, specifically my wife, was going, "Hey, you are not doing well." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know, but it's just for a season. We'll get over this. It happens in everything else in life. There's lows and there's highs, right?" But the lows were staying longer and the highs were fewer and far between. And so it starts to wear on your immediate relationship, like your spouse, because they're the ones that usually take the brunt of when things are going wrong, which is completely not fair. And so, I had that person that was speaking into, here's what I think is happening. And then I just kind of started realizing, like, I'm daydreaming about quitting the business and doing something else. I'm a habitual starter of things. And so when I start daydreaming about the next new thing, because this thing sucks, I should stop doing this. That was a big indicator for me. Before this, every 8 to 5 job I've ever had, the max amount where I felt like I was comfortable and the job was fun was 18 months. 18 months to 24 months. That was it. And then I would move on to the next thing and then the next thing. And it was always involving a pay raise. And so it was this really fun thing every 2 years. And then we'd move. And it was great for that regard. But it also was, it was kind of like I'm built for new things. But at the end of the day, it was right at year 2, it was like this tsunami of weight and gravity. Like, I'm going to have to fight my way out of this and find people that can come alongside and be amazing in the areas that I am not. Otherwise, I'm going to die. Like I'm just going to die. I'm going to burn this business down and I'm going to go flip burgers at McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that sounds probably like something other people are relating to, those same thoughts in their head, and they're like, "Okay, something has to change. Something's gotta give." So, what would you say, like, okay, step 1, or for you, like, maybe you don't have the perfect answer, but what was your step 1?
Um, my biggest, mm, my step one, and I don't know, I think this is the right answer. At least it was the right answer for me, was finding a person whose strengths complement and cover for my weaknesses. I am not super organized. I hate paperwork and I do not want to follow up talking about taxes and bookkeeping and all of these micro things, these little fiddly bits. I hate it. I don't want to do it. I'd rather not run a business if I had to do those things. And for the first couple of years, it was relatively easy. Um, there just isn't much of that to do. I did have some help and some assistance along the way from like some outsourced entities, but they weren't getting the job done. And at the end of the day, there needed to be a person to be able to be the organization for the backside of our business. And that was when you joined it. Originally, it was just joining in a small way to see if this would be as impactful as what I hoped for. And then the hope is that, okay, well, once we start, you know, moving a little bit, we hit the ground, not necessarily running, but we're just moving forward. Eventually, the idea, at least the hopes in the back of my head, was that this role would grow into whatever the business would grow into. And it's one of the few things that I feel like I was right on in this business, like finding someone who is deficient, finding someone whose strengths cover my deficiencies was probably the best thing I've done. Like it's the one decision where I'm like, I nailed that one of being able to find a person that could cover in the areas where I absolutely were life draining.
I mean, I think that what happened when I was able to join and kind of begin to offload some of those things that you, just like you said, were the things that drained you and you didn't enjoy, and it was just like one more thing. Um, it really has been a perfect mix of we're opposites, and so that works. And I think that I was just listening to a discussion and talking with an OBM, an online business manager, who she specifically comes in, helps an overwhelmed owner to begin to say, what can we take off your plate? Let's put some SOPs in place. Let's write the job description, all of that. She's just a transition person. So she
Wow.
just helps get you a VA.
Yep.
But she does a lot of the head work to make sure that you get the right VA. And I feel like something that was missing in that conversation, and something that we're now acutely aware of, but probably weren't at the time, was like, it's not just about any VA. You really have to know yourself, like know thyself, and then be sure that you know what you're looking for, because there really are going to be roles that this is so unique. Like, what is going to be the stuff that energizes you and you want to keep on your plate? And
Right.
then the things you want to offload it's not probably the same business owner to business owner. There are some similarities we're learning across the board, but I'm curious if you had a lot of intentionality um, initially when you were like, okay, I need help. I'm going to bring someone on. Were you really like, here's what I'm good at, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses, and then specifically you were looking for someone with the opposites, or was it just sort of like the Lord's provision?
Probably the Lord's provision, honestly, but also knew that you were more or less the polar opposite of me. And I was at a juncture where it's like me and the other technicians that were in the business, if I'm the problem, like if there's too much of me, then similar to like positive and negative forces, like I need to get the exact opposite of me inside of this business to help load balance the scales, so to speak, so that we can achieve a little more balance and therefore a little more peace in the business. Because it did really feel like if we don't find someone that can help us really organize, create a plan, stay on track, and then help with communication inside of the business, we were going to come apart at the seams.
I love that. I really think that a great first step when you're ready to get help, release some tasks and some of the control is begin to just do a lot of introspection, right? Like know yourself, just start to evaluate the things that you love, the tasks that give you energy, and the ones that you might be good at, but they're draining you, so that you can get really intentional about who you want to bring on and look for that person. Hopefully, that'll help avoid pitfalls of hiring many and multiple people that just aren't a great fit. And you have a lot of onboarding, offboarding, onboarding, offboarding. And just to get a little bit tactical here, I think that there are a lot of routes that you can go depending on budget, depending on just like, where you're trying to go, your appetite for growth. And I think there's like you tried, there's some outsourcing options where you can just take, go on Upwork or something like that and just take a single really specific task that you're going to outsource.
Yep.
That might be kind of like, your easiest lowest barrier to entry option. But then there's other things like a virtual assistant and just getting someone who's going to come work part time who does, just some administrative support tasks. That's great. There's also online business managers. It's a really hot new thing. So you can get an OBM. And once again, that's really like often a 1099 contract kind of thing. And then we've recently learned about a role more like an integrator. That would be probably your higher level of involvement, someone that you're really going to hand the reins entirely to eventually. And that's like probably your biggest investment. But hopefully, you're bringing someone on who is not just like offloading some tasks, but really actually driving forward, like pressing the gas toward the direction that you wanna go. Are there any others options you can think of just, like, tactically for a business owner who's like, "I don't even know what's out there?"
I think that actually makes the most sense is probably from everything that I've read and all the books and then kind of the other podcasts and platforms that I've listened to. It seems like the most logical first step, if you're in kind of like a solopreneur or a really early phase in a business, is to find those things that a virtual assistant can do. And ideally, find those things that a remote virtual assistant can do. And that can be tricky. It can be tricky to even trust those items inside of the business to someone remote because they're not in the room. They're not in your building. There's always that thing in the back of your head, like, what if this goes sideways? And honestly, if you live your life by what could go wrong, I don't know that being in business is for you much at all. Because at the end of the day, if you live your life from what can go wrong, you're probably not going to start a whole heck of a lot of things because everything can go wrong. That's the actual answer. But at the end of the day, if you can find the task that you can offload to and I'll probably date the video at the time of this recording, but it'll be like 15, maybe $20 an hour to somebody that you're just like, just do these 3 things, just do my email and then kind of correspond and then give me a summary, right? And something to that effect can be a game changer, at least just to back off the pressure, even if it's 15, 20%. And that can be huge. So you don't necessarily have to hand off the reins of execution of your business. As many tasks as you possibly can hand off to a VA or a remote VA seems to be the most logical course of action in a lot of these instances.
Yeah, it's always like a long game decision. And so I think that's the other thing you probably, like, as a business owner, really need to consider. Like, where do I hope to go? And there's a point where you are going to be maybe more profitable if you just do all the tasks and keep it small. If you have some desire to grow or you're really aware of what your time is worth, you're going to begin to understand that your time spent checking and responding to emails, following up on unpaid invoices, is maybe not your best use of time. Like your value is so much higher when you're out delivering a service, selling, casting vision, research and development, something like that. And so that's where you have to start playing the long game of, if I get someone to do these tasks, what does that free me up to do? So for sure, just for like overall business productivity and profitability, it's a really critical step in the growth process. And like you've touched on, not just for your business, for your personal life too.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Being able to walk backwards from 16-hour days to 14-hour days to 12-hour days to 10-hour days, every 2 hours that you claim back is, pretty soon you get to 10-hour days and you're like, I think I can live a normal life. And that's amazing because early on, especially when you're in the thick of it, you're in the fire, you're pulling 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour days. And we have a tendency to wear that like a badge of honor. And that is moronic. We treat working harder as if it's a badge of honor. And there are a couple things that there has to be balance in all things. And when we tip over head first into a workaholic nature, but we have a tendency to wear that as a badge, like I'm tougher than you. And in some instances we are. But the reality is you can't sustain that and you're only hurting the people around you. And so you got to be able to get back to a 8, 10, 12-hour day and work backwards and find people that can help you do that. And, in our case, you came on, started taking over some of those tasks that were life draining for me. And then we started looking at the business holistically going, okay, how do we start systemizing this business? And that was our first attempt at like, okay, here's a hot mess. How do we start building in neat rows and straight lines?
yeah, exactly. I just think it's so fun to see the growth that's possible. And I think I just want to say that, and maybe you can echo it if there's anything else that comes to you, but just kind of as a final push, like when you bring the right person on, it's a lot of fun. There's like camaraderie and teamwork. Just to have another person like pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
It's been really neat as I begin to delegate tasks to someone else to discover that someone else is actually better than me at the things I was doing. And the work on the front end to train them up, get, my procedures documented so that they can follow them, but then that they can optimize them. It's just really cool to find someone else who excels in these roles and then I get to spend more time doing what I really love to do and adds more value to the business. And I think if we just kind of like keep doing that, it's this waterfall effect throughout all departments, but it starts from the top, right? Like a good role model from the top of someone who can delegate, elevate themselves to more value producing work and time.
Absolutely. There's just so much to joy. Your life should have moments of exuberant joy. And when you are the bottleneck, that joy is not there. And it's easy to almost make that overwhelmed kind of despairing nature, this cloud that hovers over top of you, to almost lose the forest for the trees, so to speak. It's easy to be able to just have your life be gloomy. And the reality is that your life should have these moments of extreme joy where you're just like, there's just kind of a hop in your step and the sun is shining and everything works right. And you're happy that you're alive and you're happy that you're in the moment that you're in. And you're happy the age that you are in the moment you're in. And there's just all of these things and you forget about that. It's easy to forget about that. And when people are doing what they're kind of built for, their inward nature, they like these things and they're better at some things than others, you're going to have those moments of joy. And the goal is to have everybody doing the things that are life-giving, not life-taking. That's especially true for kind of an owner, a founder, a CEO, because that culture oftentimes starts from the top. And if you can't find moments of joy and moments of laughter, moments of camaraderie and building, then that trickles down to the rest of your group, if there is a group for it to trickle down at, and you end up hurting the people that you are trying to bring along with you.
I love that. Okay, so any final thoughts as we wrap up you want to share with a person who finds himself leading a business right now? Like
Okay.
they're where you were maybe, 10, 12 months ago. Any final thoughts you want to share?
So if I reach back and I talk to myself 24 months ago or more, I would say hire a virtual assistant. Yes, it's going to cost money. No, that does not matter in the grand scheme of things. You're a moron if you don't do that. You need to get that done in the next 7 days. If you don't, it's just because you're lazy and procrastinating, not because you actually want to fix the business. That's probably step number one. Find someone who can cover for your deficiencies. Step two, start sleeping more. If you don't start sleeping more, you're going to die. Step three, find a boatload of intermittent, just like a Band-Aid patch to get happy. So, for me, that was 15,000 IOUs of vitamin D3 and a lot of B12, and then just hammer, put the pedal to the floor and go. And if you can find the right person in 7 days, get the Band-Aid of caffeine is going to ruin your cortisol levels and combine and create the transformer of anxiety. Just go ahead and get the stuff that will energize you enough to where someone can come on and start helping. And yes, it's going to cost money. And no, it doesn't matter in the long run because your overall health and the health of the business matters more than whether you have a couple extra $1,000 in the bank account this month.
Guys, listen to this guy. It's coming from someone who has tried all the supplements, all the things. He's tried a
B12 and
lot.
B3. It's the only thing. Methyl blue, playing
I
with
know. I was
it.
like, besides the other ones, you were really
Creatine.
shouting out this morning in our meeting. So, yep.
Creatine's working. No,
I love it. So I think that's just great final thoughts for all of you who find yourself leading. You're a leader, your next generation. You're just like Cole and I, and hang in there. Come back, join us next week. We'll keep talking through and sharing the things that are real about leading a business, and hopefully you can take away some encouragement, some affirmation, and maybe some tactical tips. So,
yeah, you're not alone. And also reach out, get connected. If there's something that we can help with, let's do that because we are ultimately all in this together. We're not the only ones doing that. You're not the only ones doing this. Let's get good things happen when people get together and have conversations and communicate. Isolation is the killer of everything, and good things happen in community. So let's get connected, let's visit, and let's keep driving towards the goal.
That wraps up today's episode of the Next Gen Business Builders podcast. We're grateful you tuned in, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Until next time, keep building what's next.